Top 10 2024 football prospect TJ Capers trimmed his list on Wednesday afternoon, and the Louisville Cardinals were included in his top 5. On today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we're going to talk about that recruitment and why recruiting in the state of Florida is going to be pivotal for FlyVille24 moving forward. So, with that being said, stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And as always, I want to take this time to say thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Another recruiting episode on the docket for this Friday edition of the show. We'll begin by talking about five-star edge rusher TJ Capers cutting his list to 5 and the Cardinals making that list. We'll also talk about why recruiting in the state of Florida is pivotal for FlyVille24 and how it presents a golden opportunity for Louisville to not only extend the pipeline into Florida, but to take the program to the next level. And then in the final segment, we will dive into the weekly mailbag. So beginning with the big news on Wednesday, and honestly, there was a good amount of big news on Wednesday. When you look at Jack Plummer transferring from California to Louisville, and he will likely be QB1 for the Cardinals next season, but also five-star edge rusher TJ Capers cut his list, and the Cardinals made that list. Capers was a recruit that a lot of fans became or were made aware of probably back in the summer. There was talks of him possibly making it onto campus. I don't necessarily know if that ever happened. That big, I think it was like the 502 barbecue. I'm not sure if he ever made it on campus, and forgive my ignorance. I'm not sure how much he's been on campus. But obviously, one of the main things with the coaching change you have to wonder is, with a coaching change, does that mean that that coaching staff is going to go after a certain prospect, and vice versa? Is that prospect going to be interested still without that coach? Now, granted, we've seen FlyVille23. It seems like the interest in the program was more so for the school and for the opportunities and for the team rather than who was the head coach, right? So I think it was huge news that Capers released his top 5 and the Cardinals were in that list. To tell you a little bit about Capers, 6'2", 230-pound edge rusher, 7th best prospect according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 2 edge rusher in the nation, and the number 2 ranked prospect in the state of Florida. He was basically on Wednesday. He released his top 5 alongside Georgia, USC, Colorado, and Miami. 4 schools that it's going to be tough to go up against if you're Louisville. Obviously, I think that this is going to be an uphill battle, and it's really going to test the NIL infrastructure that is put in place, the opportunities that are there, the FlyVille brand, so on and so forth. I know that Zach Soskin, he tweeted out a GIF of the Miami, the sign of Miami, and basically alluded to that Louisville was going to be very solid in recruiting the city of Miami, the area of South Florida, and hopefully the state of Florida in general. But look, 4 programs that it's going to be tough to go up against. Miami, obviously, I think it goes without saying, very, very in tune with their NIL. And granted, it's the hometown school. USC and Georgia. Georgia has a national championship that they can put out there. Obviously, they're going to be in the hunt for another one here this weekend. So Georgia not only has the perks of being in the SEC, winning a national championship, but also getting guys to the NFL, so on and so forth. USC, it's a very popular brand, one of the traditional historical blue bloods in college football. They've been sort of a sleeping giant since I would say the mid 2000s, but Lincoln Riley had them right outside of playoff contention this year, so there's opportunity there. And then Colorado, prime time has been a huge change in Boulder. Colorado actually historically doesn't have a bad football program. And then you bring Prime into the mix. Deion Sanders has been recruiting at a very high level since taking over the head coach of the Buffaloes in early December. So, he's gotten some commitments from 4 stars, some 5 stars, and obviously included in recruitments for others as well. So, um, I think that it's going to be an uphill battle, like I said, but ultimately, with Louisville being in the mix here, I think that even if they were to get a commitment, it's kind of like the Ruben Owens situation. You have to essentially, go toe to toe with the heavyweights of the nation to hold on to a recruitment. So, but TJ Capers is a type of prospect that can absolutely transform not only your recruiting, but also the level of play on the field. If you haven't very dominant edge rusher. It offers up so many possibilities. I'm going to read you what Andrew Ivins, Southeast recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports, said about Capers back in April of this year, projecting him as a Power 5 starter. A front seven defender that can do a little bit of everything, looks college ready as a sophomore with a hulking frame. That's a verified 6'2", 230 pounds. Has tested reasonably well for someone with his size, with a 4.6 in the 40 and a 4.5 short shuttle on record. A thumper that likes to run and hit, excels in chase mode on Friday nights as he will hawk down ball carriers or quarterbacks of all different sizes and drag them to the ground. Has spent first few years of prep career working as an outside linebacker in a 4-3 front. Looks more than comfortable dropping back into space and has shown on the camp circuit that he's rather serviceable in man-to-man situations as well as hand checking and fighting for positioning at the catch point. Can sniff out run plays and understands how to stack and shed better than most his age. Could probably be deployed as a Mike or Sam on Saturdays, but also might grow into a full-time pass rusher depending on how his body feels at over the next few years. Should be viewed as one of the top defensive prospects in South Florida for the 2024 cycle. Will need to keep progressing, but has some of the required traits to be a multiple-year starter at the Power 5 level. So, offers from all across the country. Sorry, Alabama, so on and so forth. I think that regardless if Louisville is the choice here for Capers, whenever his decision may come, I think that it bodes well that Louisville is even in the mix here. Not only are you going towards trying to continue to build that pipeline down into the South Florida area, and we're going to talk about that here in the next segment, but also getting to a point to where you are in the mix for these very highly rated prospects. I can't think of a time in my fandom, which began in about 2005 when I was 7 years old, at a point where Louisville was going out and being in the mix for 5-star guys. Sure, they've offered in years past, but being able to go out there and get a commitment or even be close in the mix where you're getting an official visit, I think it's incredible. But obviously, you have to get players to sign on the dotted line. They do have some very highly guys rated in the 2023 class. And if it weren't for a coaching change, they might have had Ruben Owens as well. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. It's a huge opportunity, and this is huge news for Louisville. Not only that they're in the mix, but also this shortly after a coaching search. So that shows you that one or two things can be true. Number one, he's okay with the Brom hire, or number two, he's sold on the FlyVille, business approach, the vision for him here in Louisville in the NIL realm, so on and so forth. So huge news for Louisville. But in a more broad picture, I think that recruiting in the state of Florida is pivotal for the FlyVille24 class. We're going to talk about why here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at NHTSA. So imagine this situation. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think about calling for a ride. But no, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, your job, you total your car. Well, everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk, and really, the results are oftentimes tragic and deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life and or someone else's life forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. As always, I want to say thank you for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Moving right on along into a more general sense, the 2023 class was a very solid one for the University of Louisville, obviously. FlyVille24, in my opinion, obviously a small class, but by recruit ranking, best class in program history. Not only was it headlined by a handful of very highly guys rated from the state of California, but the program went back into the Sunshine State of Florida and got some big-time prospects. Stanquan Clark, four-star linebacker from the Miami area. William Fowles, four-star wide receiver from the South Florida area. Kataris Hicks, excuse me, three-star receiver, so on and so forth. So I think that this is something that makes a lot of sense. And look, I understand that one of the big things to focus on for bringing Jeff Brom in is the local recruiting, and for good reason. He's done a great job already of revitalizing the recruiting in the city of Louisville, the state of Kentucky, and the surrounding areas. But the bread and butter of Louisville football, when this team has been its best, in my opinion, I guess you can't really say that throughout, but I think back to those Charlie Strong teams and the teams of the 2010s that were very solid on both sides of the football in the trenches, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of players from the state of Florida, and the state of Florida has been very, very good to the University of Louisville football program. Elvis Dumerville, so on and so forth. Teddy Bridgewater, Lamar Jackson, Yasir Abdullah, so on and so forth. And I could go on and on. The list continues to go on and on. And not to say that every prospect that is highly rated in the state of Florida is going to turn out like those guys. Hopefully they do. But it's a little bit unrealistic to suggest that they're all going to be big-time stars and NFL draft selections. But overall, I think that 2024 recruiting, getting back to the state of Florida and continuing to maybe not repair, but retool that pipeline and get it back to where it's, getting multiple guys to the city of Louisville every single cycle is big right now. You always wonder about current commits that have pledged their commitment when a coaching change happens. But as of right now, four-star running back Isaac Brown, the 17th best running back in the country, 33rd best in the state of Florida, number 205 in the country according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. He is the lone commitment in the class of 2024, four-star guy in the state of Florida. And I don't know if this is the case every year. I would assume that the numbers are pretty high, but I want to read off some interesting tidbits that I found. The top 52 prospects in the state of Florida for the 2024 class are at least four-star prospects. 7 of them are 5 stars. 45 of them are 4 stars. 79, the top 79 prospects in the state of Florida in the 2024 class are ranked inside of the top 500. That's not including the guys that get overlooked or don't get ranked as they should. that fly under the radar that also has sort of been a staple to the Louisville football program is the underrated prospects from the state of Florida that are able to come to this Louisville program and show out at this level. So, needless to say, the state of Florida, there's a lot of opportunity here for Louisville to get multiple commitments from some really highly rated guys. There are a good amount of offers out right now. We're going to talk about those here shortly, but like I said, we're going back to the tweet that Zach Soskin put out there. Going on the radio, Louisville Sports Live with Ethan Moore, who and Taylor Lynch, but Ethan was on the show last week talking about Louisville football. So be sure to check out that podcast if you haven't listened to it Wednesday. It airs every Wednesday evening on 93.9 The Ville. Had a good interview there with Zach Soskin, basically saying that he believes that Louisville is going to do very, very well in the South Florida area. One thing that I hope to see is that it doesn't just stay confined to the South Florida area. There's a lot of talent in the Miami area and the surrounding counties, but I would like to see it rise up throughout the Sunshine State. Tampa has a very, very solid 2024 class. Looking at some of the offers that have been put out from Louisville so far, a couple running back offers. We talked about Isaac Brown, but Stacey Gage, Davian Goss, Chancey Bowens, all three are top 300 prospects. You look at the wide receiver positions where there are currently five offers out to 4-star wide receivers in the state of Florida. Two very highly 3-star receivers, James Randall, Chance Robinson, Burdell Richardson, all in the top 120. Tawaski Abrams, Isaiah Williams, Terrence Moore, Zamarian Lang, so on and so forth. And they are all over the state of Florida. There's a lot of talent in the city of Tampa. IMG Academy is loaded once again. Palmetto has solid talent. Fort Lauderdale, Daytona, so on and so forth. And then you look at the quarterback position. 4-star top 120 prospect Jaden Bradford has an offer from Louisville. Tennessee commit Jonathan Eccles, top 30 prospect from Bradenton, IMG Academy, 4-star. The defensive line, 5-star David Stone from IMG. Another Ernest Willer, IMG Academy, number 40. Eddie Pierre-Louis from Tampa, number 148. Edge rusher Booker Pickett Jr. from Tampa, number 52. Darius Hayes, number 61. Dylan Stevenson, number 92. And then finally in the secondary, Charles Lester, number 22 in the country, 5-star ranking from Sarasota. Tavoy Fegan from Tampa. Brayshawn Williams, Fred Gaskin III, all in the top 250. So I know that that's a lot of names, and maybe at this point they don't really ring any bells for Louisville fans, but and maybe they never have any true interest or vice versa, but that just goes to show you that, a lot of these guys have at least already heard from Louisville. I know that it's not the same coaching staff, so you have to put that into the mix, but there's probably been some talks regarding what the FlyVille, message is, what the plan is, so on and so forth, but I just think that if you're looking to take this program to the next level, and I'm not saying that you have to shy away from local recruiting or recruiting around the Kentucky area, the 5-hour radius that Jeff Brom talked about. I'm not saying that you have to overlook Ohio and Indiana and California and Texas. I'm just saying that there is a huge opportunity to go out and like last class, go out and get 3-4 prospects from the Florida area, maybe even more than that. As I've seen from Kentucky, Mark Stoops has been very, very solid in Cincinnati and the state of Ohio. I would like to see Louisville. It's going to be tough to contend with Florida State, Miami, so on and so forth, the SEC schools. It's going to be an uphill battle that Louisville's going to lose on a handful of times, and hopefully they get some wins as well. But overall, I think that this is a great opportunity to continue that recruiting momentum that has been borderline unprecedented here at the University of Louisville. So we'll continue to talk about recruiting when we get some more news. But for the remainder of the show, I do want to dive into the weekly mailbag. Before we do that, I have to thank you all. 1,000 subscribers on YouTube for the Locked On the Louisville YouTube page. I am extremely grateful. I'm so thankful for everyone that is consistently watching, listening, subscribing, rating, sharing the podcast on whatever streaming service you use that isn't just limited to YouTube, but it's such a cool and humbling achievement for this show. And, it's for you all. I take great pride that there's a consistent following and it's continually looking to grow. So hopefully 2023 is a solid year for this podcast. But nonetheless, let's get right into the weekly mailbag, starting out with the football team. This person asks, with the addition of Jack Plummer, what are the respective floors and ceilings for Louisville next season? I think that that's a hard question to ask because we're still making some additions, still some spots open to fill via the transfer portal and the 2023 class. So I think you had to take it with a grain of salt. I think that with the competent, solid, starting quarterback, which Louisville's obviously going to have, I think that you're probably looking, the floor, in my opinion, is 6-6, and the ceiling's probably, I think the absolute ceiling. This isn't necessarily meaning that they're going to reach it, but I think 10-2 is probably the ceiling, because the schedule, outside of Notre Dame and Kentucky, which I think that are for sure losses for the Cardinals heading into 2023 on paper, I think it's a very favorable schedule. Now, does that mean they're going to win every single game that they should? Probably not. But I think that that's the respective floor and the respective ceiling for it. So, yeah. Continuing to move right on along. This that doesn't even make any sense. Okay. I'm going to skip that one because I don't even understand what the intention of the question is. Basketball-wise, with Kentucky seemingly going in the wrong direction, a couple losses over the past couple weeks, with Kenny Payne knowing John Calipari's system, do you think that Louisville has the chance to pull off the upset on Saturday? Do they have the chance? I mean, of course they do. I mean, anything is possible. Kentucky's not necessarily setting the world on fire, but I just haven't seen anything from the Cardinals to suggest that it's a realistic opportunity. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, they very well could win, and you all will come on the show and be like, "Oh, well, we'll beat Kentucky," and it could happen. And I very, very hope that it does happen for sure. I hope that this will be a great win for Kenny Payne and company and this team and this program. But right now, sitting at 2 wins, both of those being to Western Kentucky and Florida A&M, I think that as of right now, I just haven't seen much on the court to make me believe that despite Kentucky struggling, that Louisville is going to, be able to be a huge threat in this game. They may make it close for the first half, but it's possible. I just don't think that it's probable at the end of the day. So, continuing to move right on along back into football recruiting. With Jack Plummer here at Louisville, Pierce Clarkson seemingly the guy for the future. How do you think the position is recruited over the next couple seasons by Jeff Brom and company? This is a really good question because I think that this is something that we need to talk about. Just because Pierce Clarkson is the presumed heir to the throne that is the starting quarterback at Louisville, I don't think that that means that Jeff Brom and company are going to completely put quarterback recruiting to the side, because that's how you get into a situation like you were the past couple seasons if you're at Louisville, where there weren't any great options off the bench if Malik Cunningham got hurt. Granted, Brock Doman did what he needed to do at times, but still there was a drop-off. So I think that, maybe obviously you might not take a transfer quarterback, but you are still looking to bring in a quarterback in the 2024 class to build up that depth, because I would assume at the end of the day, maybe Brock Doman transfers out, Caleb Johnson, so on and so forth. Jack Plummer's gone after this year, so you need to bring in a quarterback, maybe even two, depending on if people transfer out. So I think that you have to treat it business as normal. You need competition in the quarterback room. That's something that we haven't had over the past couple seasons. And people that say, oh, it scares off top competition. Well, if you want to be a top program, top players will compete for those spots. We see it at every single program that is at the top in college football. So I don't necessarily see the issue whatsoever. If you had to pick a preliminary breakout player that nobody is talking about for the Cardinals defense next season, who would it be and why? This is a very, very good question that nobody's talking about. That's tough um, because I just think that we're in a situation to where people talk about Popeye Williams, people talk about Ben Perry. I'm gonna go with Victone Brown, the very highly rated 3-star in the 2021 class that really hasn't played much defensive end. I think that despite bringing in Stephen Herron and company, I think that he's a guy that could compete for the two depth. And I think that it's going to be a great opportunity for him. So I think we're going to see him play some meaningful snaps this fall. So far, all of the Louisville transfers that the Cardinals have gotten have dropped in rankings. Is this a conspiracy or am I just losing my mind? This isn't the first time I've heard this. Not even this cycle. It seems like a lot of Louisville players when they commit, they drop in rankings. I try not to pay too much attention to it because I think that the offer list and the film speaks for itself. Rankings can be, heavily influenced or even political at times. So I try not to put too much emphasis into it. I mean, a lot of it, there's a good portion of it that's the truth, but I just don't see how Stephen Herron, having been a very solid player at the Power Five level, drops in ranking and goes down to a 3-star. If Marquise Groves Killebrew drops to a 3-star, I will just completely disregard rankings in general when it comes to the transfer rankings because that's absolutely misguided in my opinion. So I try not to put too much emphasis onto it. People get too caught up in rankings that sometimes I just don't think that every single player that Louisville has gotten has dropped in ranking. Like that just does not make sense to me. So overall, talked about TJ Capers, talked about the FlyVille24 recruiting when it comes to the state of Florida, also dove into the weekly mailbag. For the rest of the month, there will be 2 more episodes before Jan 1. We'll talk about the biggest individual games of the season over the 2022 Cardinal Athletics Department. We'll also dive into some weekend action. So that's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.